Welcome to our next edition of Fixer Upper, the Marriage Edition. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're taking the time to join us. And I hope this is speaking to your hearts. I'm hoping this is giving you some food for thought. And I hope that you're communicating with your spouse some of the things that you're going over right now in this series that we're doing. Our topic today, and it's a great topic, is the topic of communication. And I have discovered that most people are terrible communicators. I mean, we could talk and we could say things, but to determine whether or not you're a real good communicator, it is how well do you communicate in stressful times, in difficult times, or crucial or critical conversations. That's the most important thing. Saying, honey, I'm hungry, feed me. Anybody can do that at any time. But it's when the pressure is on, when we're having difficult times, how well do we communicate? And again, I've discovered that most people do not communicate well at all. And if you don't communicate well in the critical times, it will cause problems for your relationship. Now, I said that there are major problems that affect relationships. I said that one of the number one problems is an intimacy problem. Well, probably the number two problem is communication. It's either bad communication or no communication. And I want to talk about that today. So I have a whole bunch of things to discuss. They're probably going to be really fast points that I'm going to go over. But our meditation verse for today is found in the book of Proverbs, chapter 25, verse 11. It says this: a word that is fitly or spoken at the right time, they are like apples of gold in pictures of silver. And that verse is talking about the importance of words that are spoken at the right time, in the right way, in the right manner. Words used properly are of great value. Apples of gold sitting in pictures of silver. So words can be your friend. Words should be your friend. But on the other side of the coin, words spoken the wrong way at the wrong time could be dangerous. Remember, the Bible says life and death is in the power of the tongue. Remember that James says that the tongue is unbridled and it could burn the course of nature. So learning how to use the right words, because, I'll get to this in a second, so I'll hold off on that. At the right time is super, super important. Another verse is found in Psalms 19, verse 14, where it says, Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations or the thoughts that are in my heart, may they be pleasing unto you. In other words, we should not speak words to somebody, especially our loved one, and we should not even have thoughts about them if those same words and thoughts would not be pleasing unto God. So that's kind of how you know if I should be thinking this or if I'm about to say this. So that's the judge. You know, if Jesus were here and I said that, would he be pleased with that? If the answer is no, then you should probably keep your mouth shut or change your words of how you're going to say them, okay? Now, I want to talk about what is the most important aspect of good communication. And the most important aspect of good communication, ironically, has nothing to do with your mouth. It has everything to do with your ears. The best communicators are good listeners. Listening is the key to successful negotiation and successful communication. And that's where most people fail when it comes to communicating or having conversations with their spouse. Because most of us don't want to use our ears. Most of us, our goal is to use our mouth and use our words, and we often use our mouth, our words like a club or like a weapon, and our goal is to just win and force our victory on our spouse. I need to prove my spouse wrong in order to prove me right, and that's not good communication. Because remember, where there's a winner, that must mean there's also a loser. And remember, you and your spouse are one. The two become one. So if you win, no, you really lost because your spouse lost. Now, I've often used this analogy before, and works easier if I'm sitting behind a desk. If this is a problem, this microphone in front of me is a problem, how most couples deal with the problem, one gets on one side and one gets on the other side, and we're wrestling, we're fighting over who's right in that problem. Again, that only guarantees that there's going to be a loser. And if this is the case, there are only two possible outcomes. Outcome number one is we just keep doing this over and over and over again, and the problem never gets resolved. We just stay stuck in this battle for supremacy or the battle for being right. And by the way, let me throw this in here again right now. Being right is overrated. There are many people who have been so right that they've been wrong. Okay, so being right is overrated. Well, the other possibility, and the only other possibility, is if this is a problem, and I'm on one side, my spouse is on the other side, after a while, this is what's going to happen. And that means one person got crushed underneath the weight of your victory, or underneath the weight of you being right. Now, the ideal situation, of course, is, hey, how about we both get on the same side and move the problem out of the way and discuss how we're going to do it together. That is healthy communication. But again, what do most people do? No, we take opposing sides. It's about me being right and you being wrong and me proving you wrong. And that doesn't work. That's not healthy. That's bad. That only leads to hurt, pain, and destruction, bitterness, and you name it. So, the key to communication is listening and understanding what the other person is saying. Now, if you watched last week's teaching, I put on the board that how we help and feed and nurture our partner is when we validate what's important to them, when we acknowledge their feelings. We put validation on them. Well, when we don't listen, now, I can't tell you how many times I've heard spouses tell me, Pastor, my husband just doesn't listen to me. Pastor, my wife doesn't listen. I keep telling them over and over and over again, and they say, oh, no, that's not the problem. This is the problem. And I'm like, but you're telling me what my problem is. I'm me. I know better than you what the problem is. Because we don't listen. We need to get the understanding of where the other person is coming from, because it could change your perception of everything. Remember, life is all about perception. And we need to see from where they're coming from. Now, I teach my leaders that a good counselor gets up out of their seat, symbolically speaking, and sits in the seat of the person that they're counseling. Because I want to see where they're coming from. I want to see from their perspective. You know, I spoke to somebody earlier this week, and they were talking about there's two families and they're fighting with each other, and how the other family was wrong, and we're being hurt over it. I said, let me tell you perspective. I said, your family thinks they're 100% right. But guess what? Their family thinks they're 100% right. Your family thinks that you're the victim. But guess what? They think they're the victim. You think they're evil. Guess what? They think you're evil. But when we would understand where they're coming from, why they're feeling the way they're feeling, when we begin to understand there might actually be some legitimacy in their argument or in their point they're trying to make, when we see through their eyes, it could change everything. It's called a paradigm shift. A paradigm shift is where I see the exact same thing, but from a different perspective, and now all of a sudden I see it differently. So good communicators listen, and they get in the hearts and the minds of the... I'll give you an example. That person who you're upset with right now could have had a tragic childhood, could have had something that was terrible, that they could have been raped, they could have been beaten, they could have been abandoned by a parent, they could have been thrown on the street, whatever. And if you don't know that, you're not going to understand why they were so hurt by what you just said. Because they had this huge gaping wound and you said something very insensitive to them. But if you never try to take the time to understand why they're hurt, why they're offended, if you don't care, you just want to defend yourself, you'll never heal anything. So listening, hearing is the key to good communication. Unfortunately, like I've said several times, and I'm going to say it probably several more times, we value being right more than anything else. And that is not a good thing. Remember, peace, harmony with one another is far more important than being right and proving your spouse wrong. How could we get together on a situation? How could we solve the situation together? It starts with actually hearing what the other person has to say. And I've been in countless relationships. I've been in countless relationships. My wife doesn't know about any of those, by the way, so please no. I've been in constant counseling over relationships with people, and I've been amazed where the wife will say something, and the husband will go off and just start launching, and I have to stop him. I have to say, got to ask you a question. Yeah, what, Pastor? I go, did you just hear what in the world your wife said? Yeah, I did. I said, No, you didn't, because if you did, you wouldn't say anything you're saying right now. I go, repeat to me what she just said. And all of a sudden I get nothing in return. Because you know what? When she was talking to me, he wasn't listening. He was just going like this. When you going to shut up so I can take my shotgun out and blow her away? I go, she just addressed that. Now, later on in a conversation, and this has happened many times, later on in a conversation, I'll have to literally stop the conversation. And I'll have to say to the wife, did you hear what he just said? He said he was sorry. Did you hear that? He said he regretted doing it, and if he had to do it, he wouldn't do it again. Did you? Because you know what? She didn't hear it. She still wants blood. She still wants him to suffer. She still wants to. She hasn't got all her frustration out, and she wants to still go on the attack. And I had to. And there have been times I said, "Excuse me, your husband said 3 different times in this conversation that he was sorry, and you're not even acknowledging that he said it one time. You're acting as though he never would apologize to me." I said, "He did it 3 times." Happens to me all the time, which is why I have to point out, no, this is what he said. No, this is what she said. Why? Because we don't listen. Our ears get filled with frustration, anger, rage, or pride, ego, and we're more desirous to be right than anything else. And that's what this analogy is. When we are like this, we're not teammates. When we're like this, we're opponents. And that's not what a marriage is supposed to be. We're supposed to be teammates. And the Bible says 2 are better than 1. So when we get together on an issue and say, I'm not here to prove you wrong and prove me right. I'm here to find out how can we solve this problem. That changes everything, okay? So the key and first thing is the key to good communication is being a good listener. Now, I forgot I wrote this at the top. I actually have a book in my office on critical conversations. And one of the phrases they use all the time in that book was, don't act out, talk it out. And what that means is, many couples, when they get together to talk about a sensitive or problematic situation, they don't talk it out, they act out. In other words, they go right into their anger, their hurt, their insecurities, and they're lashing, and they're saying harsh words to each other. They're acting out, and they're not talking it out. And talking it out is the key to success. Acting it out is the key to failure. So don't act out. Now, this brings me to my next quick point. Again, there's going to be a lot of these quick points. I've had many people say to me over the years, "Oh, Pastor, it's a waste of time. We've talked about this so many times." And we can just never reach an agreement or conclusion. And I said, you have never talked about it one time. Oh, what do we talk about? I said, and here's my point. Fighting or arguing is not communication. It's fighting or arguing. Communication is different. And most people think, oh, we've talked it out. No, you fought it out or you acted out. That is not good communication. Communication starts with, I need to be able to control myself. I need to be able to control my emotions. I need to be able to control my anger. I need to not allow that to dictate how this conversation is going to go. So fighting and arguing does not mean you've spoken about it, you've discussed it, you've talked about it. Not at all. Which is why I say many people have deluded themselves into thinking, oh, we spoke about this 100 times. No, you didn't speak about it once. You argued about it 100 times, maybe 200 times. That's not the same as communicating it or talking about it. Talking about it means we're calm, cool, we're on the same team, we're on the same side. We're trying to draw a conclusion on this. We're trying to have an adult conversation. That is not what screaming and yelling is all about. So fighting or arguing is not communicating, all right? Now, without communication, anger, hurt, frustration, disappointment just multiplies on the inside of people. Things get on the inside, they don't necessarily come out of us. Now, understand this. There are various portals to things getting inside of us, okay? We could see something, and that got on the inside of us, okay? I saw my husband watching pornography, and I had a conniption over that. I saw it, it got on the inside of me. He said or she said these things to me, harsh words to me. I heard them, and they got on the inside of me. So when things get on the inside of us through those portals, the question is, how do they get out of us? there's only one portal for things to get out, and that's your mouth. You get them out of you by talking about them, by discussing them, not by screaming them out, by talking about it. You need to get it out of you. Because here's the pattern of what normally happens. Something's bothering me, something's bothering me. I ignore it, I ignore it, I ignore it. It builds up, it builds up. An explosion, an eruption takes place, and that causes bigger problems down the road. And then we're screaming and fighting about it. Never once was there a good, healthy communication, good, healthy talk about it. And all you did was just ignored it. And how many of us are mature enough to know that if you ignore certain things, they don't go away? They don't just disappear. All you're doing is kicking the can down the road. You know, all you have to do is look at our government. When, you know, a couple years ago, man, we got this $10 trillion deficit. We better do something about that. Now let's just ignore it. And now we're at what, 25 trillion? Man, that's incredible. And in a year, it's going to be $30 trillion. Well, just don't worry about it. Kick it down the road. Kick it down the road. You know, let's not discuss it. And you know why nobody wants to discuss the deficit? Because we know the way to solve it is going to cause sacrifice. And nobody gets elected by saying, we're going to have to cut things. We've become so spoiled in this country, the only way to get elected is by promising to give things to everybody. So we got to print more money and go into further debt, because that way I'll be elected. Could you imagine if I ran for government and said, listen, elect me because I'm going to cut all your benefits? I'd never get elected in a million years. But now I might save the country, but I would never get elected. Yeah, I'd have to say that when I got elected for the second term. Exactly right. So we need to make sure that we handle things in the right way, all right? Handle things in the right way, the best way, the most mature way, and that starts out with good communication, because remember, as I said, anger, hurt, frustration, and disappointment multiplies on the inside of us. Now, along the line, if you say something or do something that you know is painful towards your spouse, don't just disappear and hope it goes away. Address it. Oh, I ain't going near her. Well, we'll deal with that in just a second. You have to go to try and pluck it out. I'm sorry. I should not have said that. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. Because if you don't, it's going to grow and grow, especially inside of a woman. It's going to grow. Remember, a woman is a man with a womb. A wombed man. And it's not just babies that grow inside a woman. It's words grow inside of her in her spiritual womb, her emotional womb. That's why a man could say something, forget about it, like 5 minutes later. A woman, she hears something, it's now in her spiritual womb, and it's growing on the inside and getting bigger and bigger and multiplying on the inside of her. And you're like, what's wrong with my wife? Why do you got that attitude? I forgot that a long time ago. A woman's not made like you. Men, we're made to just shoot out the seed. That's how we are. A woman's made to receive the seed, have the seed lodge on the inside of her, and have the seed grow. That's how she's created. So men, you better understand that. If you say things, you need to go in and say, listen, man, before that seed grows and becomes a monster that I have to deal with in the future, that I won't be able to deal with in the future, I need to address it soon. I was wrong. And by the way, one of the most adult things we could ever do is say, forgive me, I was wrong. That's not a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength. Because if you're wrong, own up to it, man up to it. If you shouldn't have done it, own up to it, man up to it, and say, I was wrong, I'm sorry, I should not have done that. Giving an attitude is not a good communication technique. Ladies, now men could do it too, don't get me wrong, but ladies just seem to be more expert at it than men. Because normally I will title this, or I'll subtitle this one point, crystal ball communication. And what's crystal ball communication? I never speak a word. I kind of send out a psychic message. And he should know what I'm talking about. Well, how should he know? Well, I had the biggest puss on my face that you could possibly imagine for the last 3 days. How doesn't he know? That's not communication. That's maybe second grade communication. That's not real adult communication. And by the way, ladies, in case you haven't noticed, men are really dense when it comes to picking up certain things like that. They don't get it. they'll look right past that and they'll say, oh, I thought you just ate something that wasn't good in your stomach. You got that out of my sourpuss look on my face? When I threw the pad and went flying by your head, that's what you got out of that? And a lot of men, that's what they'll get out of it. So don't use attitudes as a way to convey conversation. That's not mature. That's not healthy. Use your mouth. Speak the words. Say, listen, I got to let you know, I was really upset. However, if you're going to open up a door, you're opening up a door for a response too. You know that, don't you? So if you say, well, you shouldn't have said that to me, you should also be prepared to get, well, here's why I said it to you, because you did this. And you don't want to hear that. That's why I said it. So some people just want to say, you shouldn't have said that, but there's a reason why I said it. I had a very good reason why I said it. So be prepared to get, some response when you say that to somebody. But in a general sense, most of the time, don't use attitudes. Speak clearly to them. Speak clearly. Say this. Had a conversation with somebody just not too long ago. And the wife was so angry at her husband for not doing A, B, or C. Turns out the wife never once mentioned to her husband that she expected him to do A, B, or C. Never once mentioned it, but boy, oh boy, was he in trouble for not doing it. Now, you know how a guy's going to hear that conversation? Man, she's psycho. How could a guy ever be found guilty for not doing things he was never told that she expected him to do? Well, the answer is, well, he should have known. How should he have known? Well, I certainly gave him the dirtiest looks possible. I gave him the cold shoulder. He should have known. It's not the way communication works. Be clear in communication. Because let me tell you another aspect out of nonverbal communication. When there's nonverbal verbal communication, it leaves a void. And there's actually a scientific principle that in space, or in space, in the galaxy, nature abhors a void. Meaning if there's a void, nature will try to fill it with something. Well, we act the same way. If there is a void in communication, guess what? We'll try to fill that void with our own thoughts. Oh, this is what she is upset about. And you could be 100% wrong. And now you have this whole narrative going on over here, and it's about something that she was never even upset about in the first place. How could you arrive at that conclusion? Well, you never told me, so I was left to fill the void, the blank on my own. And we all do that. It's our nature to fill that blank, to fill that void. Well, if there's something critically important to you that you want your spouse to understand, don't leave it to nature or chance. If there's a blank there, guess what? Fill the blank yourself so he or she knows exactly what it is that you want to discuss or that bothered you or that needs to change. Make it crystal clear. Don't just give attitudes. That is not healthy communication, okay? Very important, because you'd be amazed at how many people communicate through attitudes. Flexibility and compromise are keys to good communication. Oftentimes, the most difficult partner to deal with is a rigid, inflexible person. No, it's got to be 8 peas on the plate. It can't be 7, it can't be 9, it's got to be 8. 7's not enough, 9 is too many. Who cares? They're peas. But there are some people that are so rigid, so inflexible, that if it's not done in an exact way, and that exact way happens to always be their way, by the way, right? If it's not done that exact way, then it's wrong, and it's horrible, and you're an idiot because you didn't do it the right way. I feel sorry for your spouse, because you are an unhealthy person to be married to. If that's you right now and you're listening to this, you're unhealthy to be married to. Let me make that very clear. A key to successful relationship is flexibility. You have to be willing to negotiate things. You have to be understanding that A, nobody's perfect, B, things change, C, I have a different way of doing things than you. But a lot of people can't. A lot of people, man, it's just my way or the highway. This is the only way to do it. Do it another way, and I'll just get ticked off at you. We need to be flexible. And I want to go back to something I said last week. Last week I said one of my points was major on the majors. Don't major on the minors. Don't make a big deal out of little things. Inflexible people make big deals out of everything. Everything's a major to them. No flexibility, no compromise whatsoever. If you want to be a good communicator, if you want to be good now, think about communication as negotiation, because it is a negotiation. You have to be flexible to negotiate. Okay, you may want 1,000, he may want to pay only 800. Guess what? It should only take you about 5 seconds to realize you're going to settle at 900. But there are some people, I ain't budging even at $9.99. I want 1,000, and that may work if you're in the business world somewhere. It doesn't work well in relationships. Does not work well in communication. Be flexible. Be willing to change. Be willing to adapt, because things change as life happens. Be willing to be flexible. Flexible people, by the way, don't get bothered that much. Inflexible people, as I said, everything bothers them. Everything. Flexible people could roll with the punches. Inflexible people, oh man, they cannot roll with the punches. They're always getting hurt. They're always getting upset. They're always getting offended. Be flexible. And if I'm talking about you right now and you're inflexible, learn to change. You have to. It's necessary to have a successful relationship. Flexibility, super, super important. Next point. Keep the past in the past. Now, I put a little addendum at the end of that. I actually have keep the past in the past unless it's a continuing pattern of behavior. Because one of the worst things that could derail a healthy conversation, healthy communication, is when that person is not getting their way, what do? Let me go into my bag of weapons, and I'll go back and I'll start throwing things that you did 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. I'll throw things that your mother did, your great-grandfather did. I'll throw all those things at you just to deflect and just to get back at you. Keep the past in the past. If you dealt with it, it's dead. It's gone. Bury it. Don't keep bringing it back up again. There's a lot of people that have zombie communications. What's zombie communications? We keep raising things from the dead that we dealt with before, and these zombies keep coming back out and keep getting in the way again. And you're like, I thought we dealt with this 2 years ago. Why are we bringing it up again right now? The real reason why I brought it up again? Because I'm not getting my way, so therefore, I'm going to start fighting dirty and bring up the past. Leave the past. You know, who was it? The prophet Pumbaa said, leave your past and you're behind, he said in the, in the movie. Leave it back there. It's dirty pool to keep throwing the past up into your spouse's face. Dirty pool. If you said, okay, I forgive you, then let it go. Because if you bring it up, you didn't forgive him. Now, I put an addendum on there. If it's a continuing pattern of bad behavior, then you have no choice but to bring up the past, only to show that you haven't stopped. You keep doing it. Because some people say, oh, well, you keep bringing up my past. And it's like, I'm sorry, I got no choice. Because the reality is, I'm not bringing up your past. You're bringing your past back into your present by repeating the same bad behavior. You understand the difference? So it's wrong to go into the past, but if you keep bringing your past up into the present, then it has to be brought onto the table and discussed. So patterns of behavior are very important. But in a general sense, do not bring up the past. As I've said to some people who are probably watching right now, from the movie Frozen, let it go, let it go, let it go. If you can't let it go, you got issues. And your relationships will always have issues. Let it go. It's not that important to hold on to. I promise you. Next point, pick a good time to converse. Pick a good time to talk. What do you mean by that? What I mean is, not every time is a good time to have a conversation, especially if it's going to be a little bit of a difficult one, a little bit of a sensitive one, right? For example, if your wife is got the blow dryer in one hand, some eye makeup on the other hand, and her 4-year-old on her leg tugging her, probably not the best time to bring up what upset you last night. Right? Fair for me to say? Okay? That's not the time, because she's got to get the kids to school, she's running behind schedule, and you think that's a good time to bring up what happened last night? Not a good time. Wait for her to come home, wait for her to get the kids to bed. You might want to say, listen, hon, I need to talk to you about something, so let's plan it for 8, 9 o'clock or something like that. Give her some preparation that it's coming. Pick a good time. Many conversations fail because it's the wrong time. I'll give you another obvious example. Something happened, and man, I am furious right now. I am angry. The volcano is coming out. Probably not the best time to actually have that conversation. Not the best time. Because there is no way in the world could that one person or both people speak healthy words to each other, honor one another, because they're just too fired up at that point. What do? Call timeout. Say, okay, let's just stop this. Before it goes too far, before we say something we're going to regret, somebody needs to call timeout and say, stop. Let's just stop. Let's go take a break. Let's go outside and have a liquor wish and make ourselves better, get ourselves in a better mood. Let's come back in 15 minutes. Let's come back in 24 hours when things calm down. And now we have the conversation. Do not have it when somebody's furious or angry or hurt or enraged. You're just guaranteeing a horrible reaction to take place, okay? So choose the right time and right location. The young kids are in the area. Not a good time to have that conversation. They could walk in on you any moment. You know, wait till you're alone or wait till the kids are sound asleep or something like that. Then have the conversation. And set up rule. By the way, I don't think I put this in here, but I'm going to put it here right now. As I said, if you're watching on Sundays, I said that. No, I'm sorry. Last week I said this on Wednesdays. I get confused. I preach so many messages over here. I said we need to have a fence around the garden. And fences are standards that we live by that guide us, such as our faith. And we need to put fences around our relationship. What are fences in this sense? These are rules, for lack of a better term, that we have that we will never violate. Never. For example, I will never say a nasty thing to you or about you. Never. Well, I don't know if I can keep that. Well, then you got a serious problem then. You got to grow up and step up. You can do that. Never will I use the term divorce in a conversation unless we're talking about another couple or people that we know. When it comes time to us, never will I do that. Never will I say something like that, oh, you're a mistake, and what a big mistake I ever made. I hate you. Never. Those are fences that we put up to protect us from hurting each other and doing irreparable damage to us. Have those fences. My wife and I do not say nasty things to each other. And my wife's background, man, you know, she used to hang in the gangs, and she was a truck driver for a while. And so she was so used to just, you know, things come out of her mouth all the time. But by the grace of God, you know, she does not say horrible things. And, in fact, say kind things to each other, you know. I would also recommend if you're watching this and you're a person of faith, if you know you're going to have a difficult conversation, take 10 seconds to hold hands and pray before you have that conversation. Say, God, give us the strength to have this conversation in a mature, godly way. May the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart, may they be pleasing unto you. Sometimes a 10-second prayer could change everything, okay? Very important. I kind of said this before, but I'll say it again. You may be right, but boy, you can come off wrong. You may be right in what you're saying, but you may be saying it the wrong way. And that makes you sometimes more wrong than your spouse, who was the one who was actually wrong, that they shouldn't have said that or shouldn't have done that. Because you're coming across in such an angry, belligerent way. You're coming across hammering and punching the other person verbally. Hey, you may be right that you were upset, but boy, oh boy, you're far more wrong in how you're coming across to the other person. How you speak to one another is just as important as maybe the wrong that was done that caused you to have a problem right now. That's part of that fence that I just spoke about. Always speak in a respectful way to each other. Always. And I've said this to husbands over the years. I can remember speaking to one husband in particular. It was actually many husbands I said, if your 18-year-old daughter was going out, she had a boyfriend, and you walked in on them, and he was pointing his finger at her, he was calling her the most nasty names, he was cursing her out, what would you do? And of course, I get the same basic answer every single time. I would find a bat and I would beat his head in and say, you never speak to my daughter like that. I said, I'm okay with it. I'm fair. That's fair to me. I said, but you need to remember one thing. Your wife is somebody else's daughter. So the same way, you don't want anybody speaking to your daughter that way, don't speak to somebody else's daughter that way. You hear what I'm saying? Don't. And of course, it goes the other way around too, both ways. But keep that in mind. Let that be something that guides you. Your wife is somebody else's daughter. When you're conversing, maintain a safe environment. What does that mean? One reason why conversations fail and other conversations succeed is oftentimes because the person doesn't feel safe in the midst of that conversation. For example, over the years, I've had many people tell me, many husbands, for example, will tell me, Pastor, if I say any of these things to my wife, she won't receive anything. She'll be furious at me. But if you tell her, she'll listen to you. And that infuriates them. That's not fair. And I'll ask them, well, have I ever cursed your wife out? Have I ever called her nasty names? Have I ever put her down and kicked her when she was down? And then their head starts going down. They say, no, never. I said, have you done any of those things to her? And then the answer, of course, is, well, yes. The number one reason why people will receive comments from one person but another person is because they feel safe with that person. I know you have my best interest at heart. I know you will protect me. My spouse, I don't feel safe with them. I've lost my trust in them because they've done this to me. They've said this to me. They've treated me this way many, many times. So I've completely lost all trust in them, and so therefore I feel unsafe to have that conversation. I feel unsafe to open my heart and say, speak into it, because I can't trust them anymore. You understand what I'm saying? So it's vital that we maintain a safe environment, meaning that the other person knows that I'm having this conversation with you because I love you, I love us. This is for the betterment of us. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to offend you. I don't want to put you down. You know, please tell me if I'm pushing you too hard right now, but I need to bring this across because I think it's beneficial to you and or us. So as you maintain that safe environment, it helps you have good, crucial conversations. But I'm telling you, the minute, and this happens for both sides of the aisle, I understand that, but clearly it happens way more on the wife's side of the aisle. If the wife loses trust in her husband, the days are over for her to listen and receive what he has to say. Ain't going to happen. So maintain a safe environment. Another way to maintain a safe environment, when you feel the temperature rising a little too high, call a timeout. Say, let's stop right here. Because, come on, you know where it's going to go. You're already halfway there. You've been there 1,000 times before. Say, stop. No, stop. We're not going to go there right now. Stop. We'll take a 5-minute break, and if we can't finish this conversation now, we'll pick it up tomorrow. So maintain a safe environment, and that's very conducive to having good, healthy conversations. Along that line, I wrote this down, the next point. Trust the purpose of the critique that's coming your way. Now, you could only trust the purpose if you trust the person. In other words, somebody's saying something to you that is not flattering. Somebody's saying something to you that you may not want to hear, that you maybe don't even agree with, okay? That's a critique that's coming your way. Notice I didn't say rebuke. Notice I didn't say an admonishment. I said a critique is coming your way. And we need to make sure that we trust the purpose of that critique. When we trust the purpose of that critique, we will receive the critique. In other words, what's the purpose of the critique? It's for our betterment. Okay? It's for your betterment. That's why I'm sharing this with you right now. But going back to the previous point, we will only trust the purpose of the critique if we trust the person who's making the critique. Once that trust is lost, the person will no longer trust your purpose. They will think you have ulterior motives for bringing this up, and it will go nowhere. Next point. Don't be defensive. This is perhaps the most difficult thing I'm going to say to some people right now, because by our nature, our defenses rise up immediately. Shields up, like we're sitting on the Starship Enterprise. Warning, Romulans, shields up. First thing that comes out of our mouth. The defenses are up. Load the torpedoes. No, don't do that. Don't get defensive, because when we get defensive, by definition, the defenses go up. Nothing you're saying is getting into me. Nothing. I'm defensive. My defenses are up. My force fields are up. And anything you say is just bouncing off and not making it into my mind or into my heart, because I'm defensive right now. And not only am I defensive right now, nothing's coming in, I've got my phasers set on kill, and I'm going to fire back at you, because how dare you say that to me? And the only thing that can come from that is destruction. That's not healthy communication. That's not good. Okay? Keep your defenses down. You're with somebody who loves you, who cares for you, and you're partnered with, you're a teammate with. And they want what's best for you. That's the nature of a healthy marriage and a healthy relationship. Which brings me to my next point. Never forget you're a team. Never. The minute, as I said earlier, the minute you stop being a team, you're now opponents with each other. And opponents, by definition, are out to tear down and destroy and beat down their opponent. And that's what many marriages turn into. That's what many relationships turn into. We're no longer a team. Team develops teamwork. Teamwork solves problems. Opponents crush each other. And opponents don't... No, check this out. Teams see a problem and attack the problem. Opponents see the other opponent as the problem and attack them. Did you hear what I just said? It was profound, so I'm going to say it again, okay? It at least belongs in a fortune cookie somewhere, okay? Opponents, we'll start with teammates. Teammates see a problem and attack the problem. Opponents see their other opponent as the problem and attack them. And that is no more evident than in relationships. When we're a team, we see a problem, and we together attack the problem, not each other. But when we forgot that we're teammates, we become opponents without realizing it, and now I see my wife as the problem, or I see my husband as the problem, and now I have to attack them, and I'm no longer attacking the problem because I'm calling them the problem. And now you're in trouble. Big trouble. Last point along this, I'm just going to go for a few more minutes after this with things to avoid in a short sense. Last point along this line. When you're speaking, make sure you have a filter over your mouth. Especially when you're talking to your loved one. Especially when you're talking to your husband, talking to your wife, even your children. Always speak with a filter over your mouth. For those of you that don't know what I mean filter every word that comes out. Do not say things too harsh, too strong, too sharp, too cutting, too painful. We all know somebody that has no filter. And when they speak, your toes curl. Because you're like, I cannot believe they just said that. I cannot believe that just came out of their mouth. And they seem to have no understanding that they just offended everybody else in the room. Or they just embarrassed their spouse by saying that. There are some people that, A, don't have a natural filter. You could buy them at a hardware store. Or B, there are some people that pride themselves into not using a filter. Actually take pride in it. Oh, I'm going to say the first thing that comes to my mind. I don't care what anybody thinks. Well, you got a serious issue, man, in your heart. Because you better care what other people think, especially your spouse. So, the Bible says this, and you think that a filter's not in the Bible? No, a filter's in the Bible. The Bible says, let your speech be seasoned with salt. What does that mean? It means put a filter over everything you say. Don't just let it pour out, no matter how hurting it is. Well, I'm just being honest. That's the kind of guy that I am. No, you're being dumb and ignorant. You could speak the honest truth, but not if it's going to cause pain and harm. Count the costs before you speak, man. You know, this is your friend, your child, your loved one over here. And, you know, you don't want the truth to do more damage than the original problem was. So filter what you say. Make it sweet as can be, or kind as can be, or as less damaging as can be. All right? Okay, now, just a couple other things to avoid, and these are right on the board just so I can write on the board. That's the only reason, okay? When you're conversing, avoid sarcasm. Now, many of you may not know this about me, but I can have a sarcastic streak in me at times, okay? I know for many of you that's completely out of character of me, you think, but I can have that part of me. And sarcasm could be fun, it could be whatever. When you're dealing with an emotional situation, an emotional topic, guess what? There's no room for sarcasm in there. None whatsoever. It will only be offensive to the other person. Don't be sarcastic with them during that time, okay? So you gotta filter sarcasm out. You're not taking it serious, and I'm pouring my heart out to you right now, and you sound like you're being flippant with me and disrespectful toward. Not the time for sarcasm, okay? Keep out exaggeration. I probably spelled it wrong. I don't think it starts with an egg. Lauren, how do I spell exaggeration over there? Close enough, okay? I blew it. Here's a big problem in relationships. Oftentimes, somebody inevitably, to bolster their point, inflates or exaggerates the situation. You do this to me all the time. Famous words for a certain gender of people. I'll let you fill in the gender blank after that. I don't do it to you all the time. Now, the reality is it may have been once in the last 6 months. But no, in the conversation we're having right now, you do it to me all the time. Guess what? The conversation just went downhill. Because he or she is not going to respond to that exaggeration. Not at all, because it's not real. In essence, you're lying. I don't do that to you all the time. And now you're bringing an imbalance into the situation that I can't even, deal with. The only way I can deal with it by saying, you're lying. That's not true. I don't do it all the time. I may do it once. You never take the garbage out. Well, that may be true, and you gotta man up to it. But if it's like once every 4 months, don't exaggerate. And some people do that all the time. So make sure, and you've heard me use this other term I'm going to use right now, make sure you keep things in perspective. Perspective is important. You can't trust the news because guess what? They exaggerate about everything. There is no perspective in the news whatsoever. Everything is the end of the world. Every president is the worst president in history. Have you noticed that? It doesn't matter who's in office, okay? Bill Clinton, to the Republicans or the conservatives in the country, was the worst president since President Lucifer. George Bush was the worst president since Adolf Hitler. He's worse than Hitler. Donald Trump, I need to wash my mouth out with soap right now for even speaking his name, because he's the worst. Everything is an exaggeration. And when things are an exaggeration, there's no longer any truth. And we can no longer find common ground to discuss things. And this takes place in couples and relationships all the time. Don't exaggerate just to try to prove your point, because you will lose your point, at least not in your mind, but you lose your point in the mind of your spouse, because they're going to turn right off to exaggeration. Trust me. Stay away from belittling. What do I mean by belittling? It's very common for people when they're in the midst of a conversation with somebody, they belittle them. They put them down. They give little digs. They try to devalue them. Oh, you're just stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. And they're trying to devalue them, and by devaluing them, they're devaluing what they're trying to say. And they do that by belittling them. Don't belittle somebody in your conversation. Don't give little digs, little negative comments to them. That's not mature. That's not healthy. That will ruin a good, healthy conversation, okay? Do not, this is my last one here, maybe. Do not deflect. What is deflection? Oh, I've seen people who could teach a master's course in college on deflecting in counseling sessions. I mean, I can literally remember, having a conversation, counseling conversation with a couple one time, not from our church, and he was upset about something. And I knew the situation, and he was 100% right. He had every reason to be upset. In 10 minutes, he was apologizing to her profusely. And I'm just sitting there watching the whole thing unfold in front of me, just shaking my head. And when he finally got done getting off his knees, kissing her feet and apologizing to her, I said, man, I looked at her, I go, you are a master, aren't you? She goes, what do you mean? I go, you manipulated him so bad and deflected the whole conversation. And you know what she did? She started laughing. Because I caught her on it. I saw the whole thing. I was a witness to it. And I looked at him and I said, you started the conversation about this issue, and what did she do? In the first 30 seconds, she changed the whole issue. Well, the reason why I did, because he did this, and then he does this, and then he does that. Well, you're deflecting. Let's go back to the issue. We make excuses. Do not deflect, because when you deflect, you never deal with the issue. Ever. And there are people who, like I said, are experts at deflecting, which is why certain issues never come up. They can deflect by, oh, I'm not feeling well right now. You just don't want to talk about it right now. They can deflect with, oh, I think I heard the baby. I got to run, take care of the baby right now, which means we'll never get back to we just deflected the conversation. But most deflections are, I'm going to deflect off of me, the spotlight off of me, and I'm going to put it on you, and I'm going to change the conversation. In politics, they call that spinning, the spin zone, okay? And husbands and wives are, they could teach spinning classes, and they got nothing to do with bicycles, okay? They could teach classes on how to deflect the truth and put it on somebody else. And that is a classic way to never have a good, healthy conversation. My last point, I'll end with this. The goal of a conversation is to bring it to its conclusion, is to arrive at some sort of agreement. Even if we're going to just agree to disagree, at least we can agree with that together. Now, that sounds so phony. No, it's not. Because there are some people who cannot handle the fact that that person won't agree with me. They just can't handle that. And they'll keep fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, trying to make them to agree with me. That's not healthy. That's not good. So sometimes just agreeing to disagree, in other words, you say tomato, I say tomato, we just say, thank you. We just have a different opinion of something like that, so we're going to agree to disagree. That's okay. Okay? Sometimes that's a victory for some people. But when you're conversing about a subject, try and bring it to its conclusion. What did we get out of the conversation? What have we agreed upon? Did we agree to change a pattern of behavior? Did we agree not to try that again? Did we agree to go for counseling? Now, I'll also throw this in here too. There are there are many couples, I said this a couple of weeks ago, but I want to bring it up again. They should never have a critical conversation by themselves. They're incapable. It will lead to only fights and arguments. You need to have a third party there to help balance it out, okay? See a counselor who could be a detached third party and witness things from the outside and help guide you and steer you through some of these pitfalls, because all these things I mentioned, we just do them subconsciously. We do them naturally. They come up. We just fire like that. We're not even thinking about trying to do them on purpose. They just happen. And sometimes we need a third person to say, stop. You're getting upset. You shouldn't be getting upset right now. Stop. You're taking this way out of perspective right now. Stop. Did you hear what he just said? You know, that third party could be a big beneficial aspect to helping you reach conclusions. So the goal is to reach a conclusion, to come to an agreement how we're going to solve this problem. It may take more than one conversation. It may take, okay, we're not going to agree to anything right now, but you know what? We got to pause and go to our separate rooms and think upon this or pray upon this. Because this is new to me. Thinking I might be wrong in this area is a new thing for me. I need to digest it. You know what I'm saying? So it's okay sometimes to not conclude right there, but plan when you're going to conclude it. Don't just let it hang out there, you know, forever and never get back to it. Say, let's pick it up tomorrow. So you have all night, you have all, day the next day to think about this. So the goal of good communication is to reach a solution to achieve your goal in there. And your goal should not be to crush the other people and be right. Your goal is how can we solve this the best way to help our marriage and help our family. Okay? All right, everybody, thank you for sitting through and enduring another class. I hope that you're taking notes on this. If you have to, you can just replay it again and pause it and go over each point by point, discuss it with each other. I want to encourage you to do that. Next Wednesday, this is mainly for the people that are here right now, next Wednesday there will be no in-house service. There will be another teaching, but it will be on YouTube only, okay? So come to the church, enjoy a little prayer service in the parking lot, because the doors won't be open, okay? So it's only going to be Ustream next Wednesday, all right? God bless everybody. See you again next week, everybody.